Cautiously excited. That should be where we stand right now when it comes to Clemson Tiger football.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. I'm your host, John Bivens, or you can follow us over on Twitter at I am John Bivens. Thanks so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Here on Locked On Clemson, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, all passion, all the time, where we're bringing you everything you need to know regarding Clemson sports. Today is Monday, September 23rd. Cautiously excited. That's the theme. Talking about Cade's 180, wide receiver and excitement, and then talking about how we should still be a little bit guarded. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. When it comes to Clemson football, we have a lot to be excited about. There's so much for us to be excited about, but with all that excitement, there are a couple parts where we need to be a little bit guarded, a little bit keep our guards up. But one of the biggest areas right now that we can feel good about is 100% none other than Cade Klubnik. This man, I perhaps have never seen a quarterback make such a drastic change from 1 year to the next. I don't know the last time that I ever saw someone make such a big change in growth in who they are and their presence as a quarterback and their confidence and so many different levels as I've seen this Cade playing. He is looking better than when he made his first appearance with Clemson when he came in the ACC championship game, led us that victory. He's looked great. The past two games, he's been perfect. Almost. We'll dive in a couple minutes on why exactly we think he's been perfect, but he has looked so great. Night and day difference, a complete 180 from last year, even week one this year, to the past two games. And I think there's four big areas that I want to highlight of what truly is making the difference. Number one, his comfort in the pocket is completely different. Last year, when he was in the pocket, his feet would be moving all over the place. He'd be looking for an exit. It'd feel like he wouldn't look at his progressions. He'd look at one or two, and then he'd focus on the pocket. This year, he looks so comfortable. And I think that's attributed to Coach Matt Luke, our offensive line, who has really stepped this offensive line up a bunch. I know we played a little bit weaker opponents with App State, NC State this year, or these past 2 weeks where we've looked great. But last year, even against the weak opponents, our offensive line didn't look good. So I think that makes a difference. That definitely changes things. Cade just looks comfortable. He's finding confidence. He's finding comfortable being able to sit in there, make his presence known, step up in the pocket a little bit more rather than sprinting out to the sides. He's doing great. So comfort in the pocket has stepped up. Number two, aggressive throws. It has been so amazing being able to see him, instead of always looking for the safety checkdowns, instead of always looking for the easy throws, he's making the routine plays. He's making the routine throws, the easy plays, which are helpful. They're beneficial 100%. We should celebrate those. But at the same time, he's being aggressive. We talked about in our post-game episode, there was back-to-back plays of 40-yard pass attempts by Cade Klubnik. Both should have been caught, one which was caught. I mean, one, he underthrew a little bit to Antonio Williams, but Antonio still could have caught that. It went straight through the basket. But overall, the aggressiveness has been there. You've seen him be more than – you're probably tired of hearing us say this, but he's more than a game manager. And that's what he was coached to be last year. That's what he was based on his confidence level. We've seen him comfortable in the pocket. We've seen his aggressiveness rise in his throwing. A biggest one, and I think, in my opinion, this is the biggest change, is his decisions. This somewhat stems from confidence, somewhat stems from comfort, somewhat stems from the aggressive style. But just his decision-making, his head game has been a complete change. It feels like he's making the right reads. There's been only a handful of times the past two games where I'm like, I wish you'd have thrown that something else. I wish you'd have thrown that a little easier, right? I've only been able to be Monday quarterback to him a couple times. The rest of the plays, he's making the right reads. Look at that 55-yard run that he had, right? He made the right read and he went. When it comes to his passing, he doesn't throw it deep just to throw deep. He throws it deep when he has a man. He doesn't throw it short just to throw it short. He throws it short when nothing else is open, or that's the play. That's what the defense is giving him. It feels like he is able to read the defense at a much faster pace and then be able to make the smarter, right decisions when it comes down to what's next to do. So comfort in the pocket, aggressive playing, decision-making. And number 4 is one that I really didn't know we'd be talking about this year, is his running game. Last year, it felt like running game was both his first instinct and his last result at the same time. And I know those are complete opposites, an oxymoron, but it felt like that was his first initial thought and his last thought. As soon as he got the ball, he was looking to run. Or if nothing was there at first, he would panic and try to run out, which caused so much problems. And he would try to play hero ball and keep the ball every time. This year, he's got the reliance where he's relying on his team to truly help him be there, where he doesn't have to be the hero. But at the same time, he's smarter with it. That read option, beginning of the game, first possession, 55-yard run. He holds the ball in, splits the defense, goes untouched for 55 yards touchdown on a QB option. He's playing smarter. All 4 levels of those are great levels, are exciting levels, but we've seen a night and day difference between now and what we saw last year. It's so encouraging to see. It's something that we can really be celebrating. And here's what's wild. The past 2 weeks, he's broke a couple records. He was the first quarterback in like 24 years to do what he did against App State. But he's the first quarterback since ESPN has done their adjusted QBR rating. He's the first quarterback to have back-to-back games with an aQBR of 99 or higher. If you don't know the QBR, what aQBR is a very complicated measurement where ESPN takes 6 different factors and gives them all value. They take one, their play-by-play evaluation. So what this does is it evaluates the quarterback every play that he's involved in, passing, rushing, sacks, all of that. And it defines a value based on how successful that play is. For example, 3rd and 1 is more valuable that you get the first down than a 3rd and 10 that you get stopped short, right? It gives value to each of it. They take those. They take your EPA, which is expected points added. It's a measure art of basically looking at the team's chance of scoring. Measures the change in expected points before and after a play. So if we have a huge play, 1st and 10, he throws a 45-yard reception down the field, we're expected to get more points because of that play. So that boosts his play, right? But a negative play, if he takes a sack, we're now at 2nd and 17, that takes away from our expected points. So that goes into play. Clutch factor. How they play in crucial situations, that clutch factor, that goes into this aQBR. We haven't got to see a lot of that the past 2 games because he has started out so hot. We haven't needed it. He hasn't hardly played in the second half past 2 games, but that's there. Penalties and turnover. The QBR, it also adjusts for penalties that impact the quarterback's play. It takes into account turnovers, fumbles, interceptions, penalizing the quarterback for mistakes, which past 2 games hasn't been any. Strength of defense. So this is where the whole adjusted QBR comes in. ESPN, so all those were a part of your regular QBR. ESPN comes in and they adjust it based on the strength of the opposing defense. A quarterback who performs well against a top-tier defense will get more credit than one playing well against a weaker defense, as it should be. That's the adjusted part. And then the last one is division of responsibility. QBR also estimates how much of the credit or the blame a quarterback should get for a play. For instance, if Cade Klubnik throws a terrible pass, like the Jake Brenningstool pass against Georgia. He threw a terrible pass that was super high, but Jake Brenningstool reached up, snagged it one-handed, brought it down. That play doesn't add much value to the quarterback because it was all the tight end. It was all Jake Brenningstool making that play. But the same goes on the opposite. The pass with Antonio Williams, the 40-yard pass that he should have caught, went through the basket. That's not going to affect Cade Klubnik's value, that QBR, a lot because Antonio Williams dropped it. It should have been incompletion. So all 6 of those come in to create a QBR. And the calculation process is for every play that the quarterback's involved, the QBR calculates the expected points added, the EPA, and then that's adjusted based on the strength of the opposing defense. Then the clutch factor comes in, applies the weight, and then finally, all the plays are aggregated to create a final adjusted QBR for the game. The QBR ranges from 0 to 100. 50, if you get a 50 aQBR, you're an average quarterback. So if you get 50 every single week, you are considered average for the league. That what the system does is it gives a more complete picture to what the quarterback's doing. If a game's getting blown out and your offense is doing amazing, but a QBR value is 50, you know it's everybody else doing great or the running back doing great. If a team goes and they lose a tight game, but the QBR's value is 85, you know the quarterback did everything they could to help win the game. They just didn't have enough help. That's kind of the point of what this is. Cade Klubnik is the first one to score back-to-back games since 2002 or 2004 when they created this system where he scored 99.3 or 5 against App State and 99.3 against NC State. What does all that mean? That means he has literally been perfect through the first of these past two games. No one else has ever scored 99. Remember, this goes 0 to 100. No one else has ever scored 99 or more in back-to-back games since they created this value. That's how good Cade Klubnik has been. That's how outstanding he's been. You can talk about who they're playing. There has been weeks where Alabama has played back-to-back garbage opponents, and App State and NC State aren't garbage opponents. There's been great top-tier quarterbacks so many times in the past 22 years that have played back-to-back terrible teams that are less talented than App State and NC State, and they haven't done what Cade Klubnik has done. He is playing better 2 games than we have ever seen a quarterback play in 2 games consistently. And I'm backed up with the facts from ESPN. He has played, this is the best 2-game stretch any quarterback has ever played. And I'm backed up with ESPN's rating. That's not me being a homer. That's me stating what the facts say. He has literally played the best 2 games ever back-to-back against these. I'm not saying this game was the best ever. No other quarterback has ever played better 2 games back-to-back. That's how good Cade Klubnik has been. What does that mean? That means we can be really excited about Cade Klubnik. Moving forward, we can be extremely excited about who he is and who he's going to continue being. That's excitement peered down. Next up, we got other areas to be excited about too. Our wide receiver room, we can be excited in 100%.
Jarvis Davis here for FanDuel. You heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So guess what? I'm about to tell you a little bit more. We got a little something just for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders. It doesn't matter because guess what? With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Yes, every regular season out-of-market game. That is so dope. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And make sure you download America's #1 sportsbook.
Our wide receivers has given us plenty, plenty to be excited about. So far this season, let's just go through the stats. Let's see where everybody's sitting. So far this season, Antonio Williams and Jake Brenningstool has been our top 2 receivers. Both of them have 12 receptions. Williams has 3 touchdowns. Brenningstool has 2. Williams has 159 yards through 3 games. Brenningstool has 155 through 3 games. Bryant Wesco, who's our true freshman, has our 3rd best receiver. He has 1 touchdown, 5 receptions for 134 yards. Adam Randall, 9 receptions, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. TJ Moore, 1 touchdown, 5 receptions, 91 yards. Troy Stellato has 60 yards. Cole Turner, 50. And then Tyler Brown, unfortunately, only 4 for 23 as he's had a little bit of he's been hurt or past game and half of the App State game, over half the App game stain. But either way, our wide receivers have shown us a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of people up there, and there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. Our top 3 receivers, we have Antonio Williams, who's a sophomore. I think some people forget about this. People think Antonio Williams, and he's like, oh, they're not TJ Moore. He's not Brian Wesco, so he's old. No, he's a sophomore. He's in his 2nd year, and he's playing great. Jake Brenningstool, he's a senior. Unfortunately, he is done after this year, so we'll miss him. Bryant Wesco, a true freshman. So 2 of our top 3 receivers are and one of them's a tight end, but our top 2 wide receivers are a sophomore and a freshman, which means next year we will 100%, barring transfer, have Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco back. The year after that, we will 100% have Bryant Wesco, possibly Antonio Williams, barring the NFL draft. We have these wide receivers who are playing excellent over these past 2 games. I mean, playing really, really well over these past 2 games. And as they're playing well, they're young. We have multiple years of this. This isn't something that's going to be, that's just this year. No, this is something we're going to see long term. And another thing is this: the players that are playing this year, not the true freshmen, take TJ Moore, take Bryant Wesco out of this, but the players that are playing better than they did last year. Last year, if you're a Clemson Tiger football fan, you know last year our receivers were hurt. They were hard to watch. It was discouraging. There was a lot of times where they just dropped balls. They wouldn't make right reads. Cade wouldn't get on the ball. But we had poor receiver play last year. There really wasn't this explosive threat, right? You had Bo Collins, who's now playing at Notre Dame. He was our best wide receiver last year, and he was very underwhelming. He was very underperforming. Antonio Williams didn't have the year we thought he was going to be as a true freshman. Tyler Brown had a great year last year as a true freshman, but Adam Randall didn't do much. Cole Turner didn't do much. Troy Stellato didn't do much. These players, they were underwhelming last year. This year, they've came in, been completely different. The players that are playing excellent. They're playing with a new energy, a new rejuvenation. And I think it's all about Garrett Riley continuing to create this offense to be one that fits a great style, taking more ownership, getting more accustomed to the system. I think last year we saw a combination of factors of first-time starter QB, a brand new offensive coordinator in it. We saw younger wide receivers, people with not a lot of experience. We saw all that hit, and it hit hard. This year, we're seeing the rewards for all of that. We're seeing wide receivers with a little bit more experience starting to get better. We're seeing a new offensive line that's created a rejuvenated offensive line that's playing excellent. Cade Klubnik, we talked about his 180 turn. Garrett Riley, second year in the system, we're able to see truly more of who he is. His second full year with him and Cade Klubnik, we're able to see more of who he can truly be. All of these are pointing to so much more success. And another reason we can be excited about our wide receivers is how much depth we have at the position. I mean, we are full of depth. Let's say our starting 3 wide receivers, Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco, and it looks like Adam Randall will probably be that third starting wide receiver. Well, then after that, you still have TJ Moore, who's a true freshman, playing really well this year, already has 91 yards. You have Tyler Brown whenever he comes back for injury, which should be soon. You have Cole Turner, who I know fans have mixed feelings. We've told you our feelings on that. He's played decent the past couple of games. Troy Stellato, which we'll get into a second, he's playing well. You have depth. We have a great 3 starting wide receivers. When Tyler Brown comes back, I think he'll be that starting 3 over Adam Randall. But you have these great starting wide receivers. And then we have a second tier, our bench wide receivers. When the second team goes in, they're still better than a lot of teams' starting wide receivers. There is depth there. The offense is providing so much excitement, so much of this energy that we can be fully bought into and fully excited about. I will say this. I'm a fan of every wide receiver we have except for one. There is one wide receiver, and we talked about this briefly, that there's something about him that throws me off, and that is Troy Stellato. Troy Stellato, he is a wide receiver for Clemson. He's got 4 receptions for 61 yards this year. He's a junior. He's 6'1", 190 pounds. I can't say anything about him off the field because I don't know him, right? In interviews, he seems like a good guy. Off the field, he seems like a great guy. Nothing what I say right now is a reflection of who he is a judgment towards him as a person because I can't make that. I don't know him. What I can say is what I see on the field. And on the field, there's been some stuff over the years that just really leads me to not really like the guy on the field. For instance, what really sparks this conversation is the game this past week against NC State. He made a diving catch in the red zone for a first down that Cade Klubnik threw. Made this good catch. It was one of his few catches of the game. He only had 2 catches for 38 yards, and it was one of them. After he made the catch, he was like visibly upset. I mean, You could tell he was upset. He was shaking his head through his arms. He was upset about it. Why? I get some people we put on Twitter and we're like, why is he showing this upsetness when he just made that play to set up a 1st and goal and he's on the field? Why is he showing all that? And someone commented, oh, he's allowed to be upset because Cade has sabotaged him his whole career. Well, no, one year he was playing with DJU the whole year, but last year he really didn't have any kind of explosive plays or anything like that. And plus, if you're upset with somebody, why are you going to show it in the middle of a game on a 1st and goal situation? He just, those TV shows, everyone has seen those shows or those movies, football movies, where there's the main character and then there's a side character who's just always like a mean person. He's kind of like a bad boy figure, quote unquote, and then at the end he turns out to be a good guy, but no one really likes him in the show. Everybody knows he's just there to get a rile out of the main character. Troy Stellato seems like he's that guy. Like he's always got a chip on his shoulder, not in a great way. Like he's got this attitude, this vibe about him where he complains a lot. And again, all this is based on me watching from either a media booth or as a fan or watching on TV. I'm not judging the guy at all. I'm not saying anything like that. Just his on-field presence, I'm not a fan of at all. It doesn't fit the Clemson vibe. It doesn't fit anything that really goes on with Clemson, I feel like. But at the end of the day, he's there, and he does have good performances. Last year, he ended up with 337 yards with only 1 touchdown. This year, he's got 4 receptions, 61 yards. So whether I like him or not, Dabo obviously is very high on him. I think we're going to consistently see him on the field, so better get used to him. But the point of all this segment, going back to the main point, is this. The wide receiver room has depth. It has increased skill from last year, and it has a much improved quarterback throwing in the ball. There is so much to be excited with, and it starts with Cade Klubnik at the quarterback and then our amazing wide receiver positions and the teams that are there. But while we're excited about these 2 areas and so much more that we'll get into this week, there's still an argument for us to not let our excitement cause us to let our guard down. I don't know about y'all, but there's nothing like going to a live college football game. Hearing the fans, hearing the chants, hearing the fight songs, it creates an environment that nothing beats it. And the best place to go to get those tickets is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. What it does is it filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Clemson has a lot of games coming up soon. Make sure you get to at least one game this season by going to Game Time, type in Clemson, and pick the date you want to go to. It has some great features like all-in pricing, where it shows you the exact price without any surprise fees at checkout. It also gives you a panoramic view of your seats before you buy them, so you know exactly what to expect when you see it. It has the lowest price guarantee, or it credits you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app now. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app now today. What time is it? It's game time. While there is plenty to be excited about, don't let your guard down yet, as there is plenty of room that there could be a possible disappointment in the future. Look, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm not trying to come in and after a big win, after all these excitement, after everything we've talked about, and being like, oh yeah, still look at us, I'll pour this team. No, not at all. I'm high on this team. My expectations are high on this team. I think there's a real chance we don't lose another game the regular season. I think a very high chance. I mean, we're favored in every single game. Our closest game is one of them. We're like a 56% favorite, but the rest of them we're super highly favored. I think there's a very real chance we don't lose another game this regular season. With all that being said, I still have a little bit of a guard up. I still got a little bit of a wall up, in the words of my counselor, but I think there's a lot of stuff that we could still make sure that we're like, all right, let's truly, before we're all in, before we're 900% and Clemson's not losing, putting all our money in that they're going to go undefeated the rest of the season. Let's make sure we remember truly where reality sits. Week 1 was the Georgia game. In that game, as much as we all want to forget about it, as much as after these past 2 games and Cade literally being almost perfect, better than any other 2-game series by a quarterback we've ever seen, that Georgia game still happened. That game where the first pass of the season, Cade underthrew and short hopped a running back on a 10-yard pass. sideways. That was maybe a gain of 3 yards. That was going to boost up for a gain of like 50, but incomplete at that. This is still the team that didn't step foot in the end zone the entire game. This is still that team. This is also a team where the first game we played was against App State. And I've talked about how App State is not a team to be slept on, but unfortunately, they don't look too hot this year. They just got blown out at home against a lower level opponent than they were. So there's still disappointment there. Like that shows that maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. And with that being said, too, NC State has shown that this year they do have problems. They have quarterback problems. Grayson McCall is nowhere near what everybody was expecting him to be. He's got this undisclosed injury that people are rumoring that it's a concussion. I wouldn't be surprised how CJ Bailey played against us if he's the new starter for NC State football, even when Grayson McCall comes back. We'll talk about more about how he kind of caused some concerns for our defense at another episode this week, but still at the same time, NC State is a weaker team this year. They got quarterback problems. Their offensive line has truly struggled this year. Their defensive line has also struggled this year. Secondary, they have some questions. Running backs, they've had this platoon of running backs because not one of them is truly stepping up. Jordan Waters from Duke was supposed to be this amazing running back, and he hasn't shown that. So Georgia game happened. App State was looks down this year. NC State does not look like they're living up to the offseason hype. With all these things, I want to make sure let's come back to reality. As excited as we are, as all bought in as we are, let's make sure we still have a little bit of guard up. Because I want to remind you, last year we laid an egg against Duke. We opened the season and laid an egg 28-7. We then followed that up with Charleston Southern, where Cade went out and threw for 300+ yards. We won that game 66-17. Next game, we played Florida Atlantic, 48-14. We won that game. Cade Klubnik did not look good in that one, only had 169 yards. But at the same time, we won that game comfortably. And I will say, App State and NC State are no matter how down they are far better than Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic. But we won 2 dominant games, and then that's when the trouble started. And we really started to see Cade Klubnik struggling, not being able to complete. We lost to Florida State in overtime based on some poor play calls and Cade Klubnik not making the right reads, poor passing. We saw that happen. That Florida State game was the beginning of, this is Cade Klubnik, right? Technically, the Duke game was, but Duke game lost 2 comfortable wins and then really got to see Cade Klubnik get exposed. Right now, we had a really ugly game against Georgia, 2 dominant games. And I'm not saying these games were the same as Florida Atlantic, Charleston Southern. Like we talked about, Cade did something that no one has ever done, right? Our team has looked amazing. Our team has looked much better than they did in those 2 games last year in week 2 or game 2 and game 3. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're not through it yet. We're 3 weeks in, technically 4 weeks, but we're 3 games in. As much as excited as we are, and I'm excited, I'm all with you. I'm pumped about this team. Let's make sure we remember, all right, it's still early. 2 games does not make a mark of who the team is, right? 2 games, it shows a little bit of consistency. Cade has showed he can do it back-to-back. Now, can he show us he can do it for a whole season? Can he show that those turnover problems from last year are completely gone, or is it just the opponents really didn't force it? Does our wide receivers, have they truly made that jump that we needed to see, or was it just weaker opponents, right? Now is the time where we're coming in, we're getting into conference play. We play Stanford next, which this is another game. If we do the same thing against Stanford, my questions are gone. Because yes, Stanford isn't this great opponent, but it's the 3rd above average opponent that we'll play that we dominate. So if we dominate against Stanford, it answers all these questions. But I just want to remind you, as Clemson fans, don't let yourself be heartbroken if we come out and lay an egg against Stanford. I don't see that happening. I'm not predicting that. I'm just trying to make sure, as excited as we are, as energetic as we are, as all in and as bought in on this team as we are, let's make sure we're guarded. Let's be cautiously excited. That's the theme for the episode. We're so excited. Let's have a little bit of caution. let's not let ourselves be fooled too much. So let's just proceed with cautiously excited. I think that's a safe spot for us to be with Clemson football. But with all that being said, that is going to wrap up this episode of Locked On Clemson Podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. We appreciate all of our everydayers. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. It talks about everything from NIL to schedules to conferences to the biggest games going on right now. Spencer McCaughlin's got a great show over there. Make sure you go listen to that. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let us know your thoughts on today's topic. If you agree, if you disagree, are we being too cautious, too guarded, or are you all in, or are you with us with that guarded? Let us know. Drop a comment. Send us a message on Twitter. We'd love to have a conversation with you. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, whether audio or on YouTube. That way we can be your first listen every single day. Make sure to check out other podcasts from Locked On Podcast Network, but we can't wait to see you in tomorrow's episode. Until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.